Chapter 5, 1 by 1, 2 by 2. How many years is the judge about to serve? Up to you. Hippie Fl1p, May 1st, 12:44 p.m. The yellow lights on my car flashed twice. Beep beep. The scent of cheap Axe cologne radiated off my lightly wrinkled dress clothes as I began walking through the parking garage towards the main entrance of the Minneapolis Government Center. 12:49 p.m. My hands pushed against the huge glass revolving doors, spinning me into the gigantic Minneapolis Government Center. 180 degrees, and I was in a whole new world. However, mentally, I was on a mission to check in with Mr. Dump at his office. My eyes followed the mile-high arch ceiling towards the right side of the first floor until I reached the security checkpoint. I greeted the white officer on my right-hand side as I placed all my belongings in a brown plastic bin. "Good afternoon, officer." "Good afternoon to you too," he replied. I advanced through the metal detector and listened closely. The machine remained silent. I continued onwards towards another officer dressed in his brown, shit-colored uniform. He watched the heat levels on the machine as I passed through. My eyes glared at his white forehead, which remained motionless and unwrinkled without a sense of surprise or concern. Next in the assembly line, Officer Smith. I glanced up from his name tag at his pale face as my brown bin rattled along the spindles of the conveyor belt and into an infrared scanner. Next up, Officer Thompson. His white hands laid motionless against the keyboard like bricks. He continued to stare down at his screen, flowing back and forth with infrared beams. His eyes rose up from the screen, and my items popped out of the infrared machine, continuing towards the end of the conveyor belt, where there was one last officer. I collected my items and restuffed my pockets. The last officer reached for the brown bin with his big white hands. I stared at his name tag dangling in front of my face. Officer Wesson. I proceeded through the security station into an elevator. The floor shot up from underneath me. Bing! The elevator stopped on the 8th floor. I exited out of the elevator and scanned my fob at the main entrance of the Hennepin County District Attorney's Office. I strutted my way past the 13 receptionists. Then I picked up my pace as I passed in between the 30 paralegal cubicles scattered in between the offices along the side. I made sure to avoid eye contact with any and all of the family paralegals. They always looked so sad and miserable. Next, it was the traffic and misdemeanor section. They were a little bit more happier than anyone else in the office. But then again, they had the least stressful job in the whole office, so they got paid significantly less. I continued to follow the 30-year-old aged brown carpet until I made it to the back of the office, where I became face to face with the biggest and only white door in the entire office. I admired the smooth edges and fine ridges defined along the perimeter of the wood door. In between the beautiful crevices of the door rested a gold plaque with the name Ronald Dump engraved into it.
"Come on in!"
I stepped into Ronald Dump's all-white office, where I noticed the only thing that wasn't white in the office. Mr. Dump's brown floor. He continued to jam-pack his all-white, bulky snakeskin briefcase as his voice echoed back and forth, bouncing off the walls of his office.
Hippie, it's good to see you today. Are you ready for a big marijuana case today?"
I replied, "Of course, Mr. Dump. Let me know if you need me to take any notes or write anything down." Mr. Dump grabbed his briefcase off of his all-white desk. Then he sped past the offices and cubicles at an intense rate. I tried to keep up, walking side by side with him, but he kept progressing with every step. I always seemed to be one step behind him, until we reached the elevator. I pressed the 10th floor button and listened closely. He fired fact after fact off like a loaded 12-gauge shotgun at close range. One fact. It was clear to me that Mr. Dump only had to prove 4 elements to the law to convince the judge that the defendant was guilty of distributing marijuana. The first element was possession of illegal drugs, which could be proven through evidence. The second element was distribution, the sale of drugs. The third element was an exchange, money for drugs, drugs for money. The fourth element was the hardest, proving it all happened through a traceable transaction. Bing! The elevator doors slid open. Mr. Dump had way more evidence than that. He had an entire operation detailed top to bottom, from growers to peddlers. The intensity of his movements resumed as he exited out of the elevator. Every person and door he walked past increased his energy. He was ready for war. Mr. Brown was going down, and Mr. Dump was prepared to unload facts to destroy any credible defense. Mr. Brown's lawyer might attempt. The courtroom doors to our left opened up as a lawyer exited out. I glanced inside at the family courtroom and realized it was bright and half empty. But my eyes were intrigued by the doors shutting, and for a few milliseconds I glanced towards my right at the family courtroom lobby. The race and faces of the individuals became stuck in my mind. Some were stressed, others were nervous, but all of them had two things in common. They were all waiting in the family courtroom lobby, and they all appeared to be white. A chord struck in my brain, causing a deep stimulation as we continued at a fast rate towards the criminal courtroom. Adrenaline flowed through my bloodstream, shooting directly into my heart. Mr. Dump pointed towards the next set of courtroom doors.
Civil courts. That's where money is the biggest issue. I would definitely recommend you sitting in there sometime and observing that courtroom during your internship.
He talked arrogantly with his back turned to me.
I made a lot of money in that courtroom before I turned to criminal law.
I became mesmerized by his words. He confidently moved without showing any sign of fear or regret. And in that moment, I imagined being Mr. Dump, walking towards the courtroom. I pictured myself in the luxurious suit. I saw myself walking into the courtroom, standing behind the prosecution bench with power and authority. The doors to my left opened again, but this time a crammed courtroom lobby filled my vision. My mind processed the diverse population of parents and children. I mumbled lightly under the noise of the lobby. Oh, the lucky numbered door to our left is the juvenile system in full stride, where everyone will be facing 1 day to 365 days. Its only concern is money and children, in that exact order. My mind wandered, connecting several observations as the ethnicity of courtroom attendees started to diversify significantly compared to the first few courtrooms. From 1289 to 1287 to 1285, the numbers continued to decrease. My eyes continued to search for the lucky number 1275. However, my mind continued to analyze the faces of people being processed by our court system. My brain circulated, sorting and categorizing the faces from the courtroom like paperwork in a court case. One case to the next, the pages got thicker. The diverse population significantly outnumbered any other race, and their records became longer based on the color of their face. However, one thing stood out to me. I noticed in the family courtroom, attendees appeared to be similar to myself, white. But my brain pulsated with alternative visuals when it circulated through the juvenile courts and to the darker-skinned minorities who were all waiting for their criminal court cases. My eyes flickered. I looked right and then left, right, then left. Blink, blink, blink. My eyes raced along the gold lining around the ceiling trim. The courtroom numbers popped out in front of my eyes on my left side. 1279, 1278, 1277, 1276, 1275. That's when it hit me. The only white faces in the lobby were right in front of my face. I took a step back as I looked at the two white officers standing in front of the courtroom doors. Then I gripped onto the wood door handle. I pulled the door open and held it for Mr. Dump, who strutted in front of me into the courtroom. I looked back at the lobby full of diverse individuals awaiting their trial. Good luck. The door slammed behind me.